Ghana Tonight is brought to you by
Flamingo Paint. Superior durability, superior hiding, superior coverage, simply superior.
Sasso insecticide spray and coil.
Good evening, welcome. This is Ghana Tonight. We're live from a news about this Saturday, the beginning of another week. We're live on 3FM 92.7, also on TV3 Ghana on Facebook, DSTV channel 279. We're all across the world on 3news.com. I'm Alfred Ocansey. Tonight, President John Dramani Mahama fulfills a promise in his 120-day social contract, launching a code of conduct for public officers. We'll tell you what's contained in there, the highlights of it, and how useful that really may be in the fight against corruption in the public sector. Also, time is running out for the president and his National Democratic Congress to fulfill all those promises, 25 of them, in that 120-day social contract. We look at the key fulfilled and outstanding promises tonight. Opposition New Patriotic Party leads minor political parties to demonstrate against the suspension of the Chief Justice, the Leadership Justice Gertrude Tukono. We'll look into their demands and bring you some highlights into it. Stay with us here on Ghana Tonight. And as always, you're an integral part of the conversation. We're also learning that there's already conversation to reverse, or as it were, review some of the names of the tertiary institutions that were named under the XY Nana Akufo-Addo administration, to either reverse or review them. But the Education Minister, together with other stakeholders, are already having that conversation. We'll tell you how the stakeholders in the education space think about what's going on in this regard. You're an integral part of the conversation. Let's hear from you. The hashtag we're using is Ghana Tonight on Facebook and on X. Let's get talking. Let's settle for Ghana Briefs.
All appointees of President Mahama who failed to declare their assets have up to Wednesday to do so or be sacked. President John Mahama gave the stern warning after he launched the code of conduct for his appointees. The president is giving immediate punishment of forfeiture of 3 months' salary plus an additional 1 month, all to be donated to the Mahama Care Fund over failure to meet the deadline.
For all those who are appointed or nominated before 31st March 2025 and failed to meet the deadline, you are to forfeit 3 months of salary to be donated to the Ghana Medical Trust Fund, named after me, Mahama Cares, in addition to 1 month's salary that I've asked all appointees to donate to the Mahama Cares Trust Fund. So it means that those who omitted to declare your assets by the date, you are paying 4 months' salary to Mahama Cares. However, if by close of day Wednesday, 7th May 2025, any of you still fails to declare your assets, count yourself automatically dismissed.
Leadership of the opposition New Patriotic Party say they will resist any attempts by the government to control the judiciary following the handing of a petition at the Jubilee House today. Hundreds of party supporters along with allied opposition parties marched the streets of the capital protesting the suspension of the Chief Justice Gertrude Tukono. Alexander Penyu-Marking is the minority leader.
We believe that what is happening is not for us. There must be an end to this issue of you do me, I do. There must be an end to retaliatory politics. In Ghana today, all of us as political actors have a story to tell. Where do we end the vicious cycle? It is not yielding to the whims of hawks and hardliners in our respective political parties that will make us better political leaders.
National Service Scheme (NSS) personnel are urging authorities to delay the implementation of the No ID Card, No Payment policy. The directive recently announced by the government aims to streamline the payroll system and eliminate ghost names to ensure efficiency.
We want to plead with government that I think the Ghana card thing should be held on for some time and make sure that, there are decentralized processes by which we can register. I think possibly after that we can enroll that in our system.
The Minister for Education, Haruna Idrisu, has announced plans to rename the CK Tadam University of Technology and Applied Sciences. A bill to that effect will soon be laid before Parliament. This comes as part of a broader move to rename selected public universities across the country.
Government has taken a decision to review the names of some of the universities. And therefore, I will be presenting a bill to Parliament after a committee that I'll be putting in place review it.
Ghana's growing reliance on the national oil company for off-balance sheet borrowing has pushed its indebtedness to the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation to a record $1.25 billion. The Public Interest and Accountability Committee warns the trend threatens the financial health of the corporation and undermines its core mandates.
There's more news on 3news.com. Make some time and visit 3news.com. This is Ghana Tonight. As always, proudly brought to you by Sasso Insecticide Spray and Coil, Kumtumtum Preco, and Flamingo Paint, Simply Superior. Coming up next, the opposition New Patriotic Party wants the president to revoke the suspension of the Chief Justice. We'll get into the details of that as we go on. But as we're getting into it right now, the Code of Conduct of Public Officers, that's our focus tonight here on Ghana Tonight, especially because of that 120-day social contract that the president indeed has with the Ghanaian people, which is just some 2 days away from elapsing. Now, he has issued a final warning to his appointees to declare their assets by Wednesday or face dismissal. The president has also introduced these penalties, including salary forfeitures for those who miss the deadline by Wednesday. So, and there's a reason why the deadline Wednesday is in focus. One, yes, it's a grace period for these appointees who didn't declare their assets, but also it's on Wednesday that the 120 days of John Dramani Mahama being in office as president of the Republic of Ghana will elapse. So that 120-day contract, which we'll be getting into, is Wednesday that the deadline would elapse, and that's why he's giving them that deadline. But he gave a stern warning after he launched the Code of Conduct for his appointees. We'll get into aspects of the Code of Conduct, but the president was quite clear in his words. Those who have not declared their assets as of the 31st of March, that deadline, even though the whole of April went through, some of them have also, as we speak, still not declared their assets. They need 2 days to do that by May 7th. President says you have forfeited 3 months of your salary. If you've taken them already, go and refund them, because an additional 1 month that he is asked to be donated to the Mahama Cares Fund over their failure to meet the deadline. Take a look at the president's statement earlier today.
On the 18th February 2025, I set a deadline of 31st March 2025 for all appointees who are taking office or being nominated at the time to declare their assets. An update provided by the Auditor General to my office indicates that some of you failed to meet that deadline. For all those who are appointed or nominated before 31st March 2025 and fail to meet the deadline, you are to forfeit 3 months of salary to be donated to the Ghana Medical Trust Fund, named after me, Mahama Cares. In addition to 1 month's salary that I've asked all appointees to donate to the Mahama Cares Trust Fund. So it means that those who omitted to declare your assets by the date, you are paying 4 months' salary to Mahama Cares. However, if by close of day Wednesday, 7th May 2025, any of you still fails to declare your assets, count yourself automatically dismissed. The assets declaration regime is an important mechanism to check corruption and abuse of office, and it must be respected by all. My brothers and sisters, this is a very strict code, I must admit. But if we abide by this code, it will restore the faith of our people in our democracy. Strict compliance with this code will restore confidence in the political elite and help to consolidate our democracy. And so I expect all of you to do your best to abide by the code.
So that's the president there, and placing some importance on this code of conduct that he launched today to guide his appointees, and it is to be abided by strictly. Now, take note of his words. He says the disregard of this code of conduct would literally lead to a downtrodden confidence in the democracy that we are practicing as a people. That's the crucial aspect of this we're going to be having a conversation on. But the Chief of Staff, Julius Debra, also warned that the code of conduct will be applied to the letter, and anyone who does not comply would be punished accordingly. Take a look.
Senior government officials, honorable ministers, deputy ministers, and staffers. My work here is very simple, just to pave the way for His Excellency to launch the code of conduct. But before then, I just want to draw attention to one thing. An aspect of governance is like running a boarding school. There needs to be checks and balances, rules and regulations that tells you don't walk around during prep hours. The same thing applies to what we're doing here. And so I will encourage each and every one of you, once you get your copy, to study it just like your Bible, because there shall never be any excuse for whatsoever when you cross the line. And Mr. President, with your indulgence, let me tell them a little story. Colleagues, the only time you will not be able to reach the president is when we are about removing you. I've heard some of you say, oh, he's my friend, I go to his house. Trust me, even if you meander your way to reach him through his driver, his ADC, the president will tell you, as for this Julius, this issue came up, and I told him to wait. Look at what he's done. But he's written the letter already. So, my colleagues, please, I wish we are never going to have that bad experience for removing any one of you. But don't forget that if you play ignorance, it's never an excuse. On that note, I wish you all the best. Do your best. Let's make the president.
Well, that's the Chief of Staff, Julius Debra. So now you know the appointees of the president. If you're trying to get through to him or Julius Debra and you're not getting him, you know that your days are numbered. You're going to be sacked, essentially. That is, if you have not complied with the declaration of your assets. You have up until Wednesday to do that. In fact, there are others who thought that to the extent that the president had given a 31st March deadline, those who have not complied with that deadline should be sacked and not even be given a grace period to Wednesday to declare their assets. But that's another aspect of the conversation we would have. This code of conduct, as at the time it was launched today, the president indicated that the appointees have not seen the details of the code of conduct. They'll be receiving them in the coming days. But the president himself gave some highlights of this code of conduct, which we have transcribed, and this is it. Follow me closely. He says, all political appointees must serve the public with integrity and impartiality, must place the national interest above their personal interest, must avoid misuse of office or state resources, must declare and manage any potential conflict of interest, must eschew opulence, be accountable for every cedi or public money you spend, and be humble in service, measured in your language, respectful to citizens at all times. And you can understand where this is going, because the term arrogance of power is what the NPP says is one of the factors that caused them to lose that election in 2024. You've heard the likes of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, the flag bearer of the party in the 2024 election, say this. So if you see this in there as one of the codes of conduct to guide President Mahama's appointees, it says you should be measured in your language. You should be humble in service. Respect citizens at all times. How do we measure this and then also ensure that this is complied by? And that's why the president says citizens would have to be part of the process of ensuring that this is implemented to the letter. If you encounter any public officer who is arrogant and not humble, then you have other avenues of reporting them. Say there's going to be a website. But how to measure humility is also another conversation that we'll have. Any situation that creates a conflict between your personal interest and your office, official duties must be avoided or disclosed. This includes holding stakes in companies that deal with government or with your ministries, using insider knowledge for your personal benefit, awarding contracts to entities that are connected to yourself or your close family. Essentially, insider trading and the conflict of interest. Conflict of interest is a big issue, and in fact, that's why you see that it's also captured in here quite clearly in this code of conduct. And then also interest of friends and family. And that is the concept of beneficial ownership as well that comes in here for the anti-corruption crusaders who have been talking about this. You must avoid making decisions that benefit your relatives or close friends. You must not recommend them for contracts or appointments. If your actions give even the appearance of bias, not even the actual, the appearance of bias, if your actions get that, you compromise the integrity of your office, and on the basis of that, you're going to face the consequence of breaking this code. And then this one, this particular one, is what also has generated some conversation. In this code, as we heard the president give this highlight, appointees are prohibited from accepting gifts or favors, especially from companies or individuals with interest in government decisions. If a gift is received during an official engagement and its estimated value exceeds 20,000, it must be declared. The only exception is modest gifts to staff as a reward for excellence or retirement. Now, the question that you had some anti-corruption crusaders ask, and in fact, we've also been asking those questions, knocking on the doors of government to provide some explanation to this as to why this 20,000 cedis limit was put there. Because to many, does that mean that an appointee can receive a gift 20,000 or below, and that one you are not really expected to declare it? Because the wording of this, if you put it into context, if a gift received during an official engagement and its estimated value exceeds 20,000, then you must declare it. But then, if we're expanding the tentacles of this particular statement, does that mean that because of the kind of values, in terms of monetary values, that appointees come into contact with, 20,000 in the scheme of things may not be so much? But then again, it raises questions as to why 20,000. We'll get a conversation on that as well, and not something below 20,000. Some have suggested 10,000, 2,000, 1,000 cedis, a gift, you should declare it. Or 1,000 and beyond, you should declare it, not 20,000 and above, right? It's another issue. Ministerial travel. All officials or unofficial travel outside Ghana must receive prior approval from the Chief of Staff's office. After each official trip, a report must be submitted on the trip, and this is impressed, retired within 14 days after your return. Where government is footing the bill, the trip must be necessary. It must be budgeted for and aligned with national priorities. Retroactive approvals will no longer be entertained. There are quite a lot of them. If you can find a full complement of this on 3news.com, no political appointee under this administration is permitted to purchase state assets, whether land, vehicles, shares, or buildings, directly or indirectly. If you attempt to do so and you are found out, your appointment will be terminated. That's a prohibition on purchasing state assets. Sanctions for violation. The code sets out consequences for breach, for public apology, to reprimand, to suspension, to resignation, or ultimately termination. So these are the levels of sanctions as enshrined in this code. The highlights given by the president himself. Public apology, reprimand, suspension, resignation, or termination, depending on the levels of the offense that you commit as an appointee. Citizen engagement and also reporting. A portal will be created for the public to report suspected breaches with guarantees of confidentiality and impartial investigation. So this is what caps it all up based on the highlights that the president gave of the code of conduct that he launched today for his appointees. Now, Martin Kpebo is a private legal practitioner. He is also one that also led the Komeprekolode demonstration, an anti-corruption crusade as well, as joining us on Zoom right now for a conversation on this. Counsel, good evening. Thank you for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. First of all, let's start off from the point that the president and Julius Debra, the chief of staff, made earlier. Those who have not declared their assets as of the 31st of March, that deadline that the president gave, president says the punitive measure, 3 months salary, have to forfeit it, but then you have up until Wednesday to declare your assets. A punitive measure, you would say, is enough to whip them in line, the 3 months salary that they have to forfeit?
It's a bit mild. Yes, a little bit mild. Maybe 6 months would have been quite like it. Yes, a bit mild. So there's no need to say everything has to be paid now. So it could have been 6 months so that maybe they pay 3 months this year and then another 3 months next year. The most important thing is that there will be verifiable evidence that they've paid. Yeah. Because you remember, on the other side of the spectrum, Mr. Daniel Yaudemlevo has asked for them to be sacked because they've embarrassed President Mahama. Yeah, it's true. If you look at it, I don't know how they could have missed. And now, of course, we are talking about, is it 5 ministers, 4 deputies, right? And then other appointees. Especially as you remember last year, I mean, we were on the neck of President Kufuor. Give us the world-class COPOP you promised. That's the Code of Conduct for Public Officers, right? Which is an IMF conditionality. We made a lot of noise about it last year. So I don't know how, over 40 years is quite a staggering number. Oh, well, but I'm sure we are all learning. So we'll see.
And you say that this code of conduct that has been launched today by the president, because you reference the code of conduct for public officers bill, which got to the cabinet level in the actual administration. The former president made statements to that effect. This cannot in any way replace that. And you want timelines for that particular conduct of public officers bill as well to be given out by the president?
So we'll think about it. Maybe we should be sending looking at asking the IMF too, they are also largely to blame for this current state of affairs. They should have tied it to one of the disbursements, that say the second or third disbursement. That's to say that that law should have been passed before the second tranche or third tranche, the disbursement was done. So we will reflect on it now before Saturday when we come to the key points to see what is feasible. Maybe in the meantime, too, perhaps if it's possible for Dennis and Co, your producer, lawyer Puabiri, so that you try and seek an interview with the IMF, that they should look at what we've suffered. Akufo-Addo didn't deliver on it. Now, a new president has come with a code. What do they think? The IMF too should have learned a lot from this. That corruption is a very difficult, subject, a very difficult matter to deal with. So they should have, their experience should have shown them that this thing, they should have done something about it. So maybe we need to hear from the IMF too, what the role they've played in not making sure that this law is passed. And I will reflect and come, maybe civil society, we should have a symposium like we did the last time, that we can get a consensus on the timelines to send to President Mahama on it. So there's no need to rush. Let's get, democracy is crowd wisdom. Let's ask other civil society actors to wade in, and then we'll get a consensus on the timelines.
I see, but looking at the details of, or the highlights I just put out there of this code of conduct that the president launched today, these highlights, conflict of interest, you talk about interests of friends and family and many others that he captured in there. What signal does it send to you?
Oh, definitely it is a signal of a sort, but it doesn't meet the threshold that had been set down not long ago, some years ago. And to go straight to the point, it is the IMF conditionality that we should pass a new robust code of conduct for public officers. So specifically a new act of parliament, right? So that's the IMF conditionality. It is one that civil society fought for. I remember Mary, Ada, Ace and Kuma and Co. They fought for it, and it was made an IMF conditionality. When we went to the IMF, was it in 2022? Yes. So this one that President Mahama has launched is not the bill, the one that had to go to Parliament and had to be, or has to go to Parliament and has to be passed. So there are two different things. So I expect that in the coming days and months, he should let us know what his plans are on that one, because that one too is non-negotiable. It's an IMF conditionality, and citizens fought for it. So that's that one that's going to be binding on the next administration. So let's learn a huge lesson from the current one President Mahama has launched. Do you know that this one that President Mahama has launched is not his first time of launching an executive code of conduct like this? No. During his tenure in the 2012 to 2016 one, he did one. But because it wasn't a hard law, but it was an executive decision, you see that when President Akufo-Addo came, you didn't hear much about it for the 8 years. So it was more or less shunted aside. You see, then citizens kept clamoring for a new law, one that will allow for publication of the assets once the public officer has declared his assets. Citizens also clamored for verification so that if the public officer files, the Auditor General's representatives will go and verify so that it will help avoid or reduce the case of anticipatory filing. That's a case where public officers will put in properties they don't even own, but they hope to own as they get, money, freebies, etc. from public office. So, and then the punishment and also the frequency of filings, like now internationally it's recommended that it should be done every year, etc. Good. So you would find that these are matters that citizens clamored for to be put in a new code of conduct for public officers, called a COPO, right? And eventually, as I mentioned earlier, So President Mahama having done one previously, and that one having been thrown away, this new one that he has launched, it faces the same risk. This time, maybe from the same NDC, because, President Mahama has just one term, and then somebody else has to take over from him.
Right.
Don't be surprised.
But Council, there's one point I want to come in quickly before we end this, and whether the concerns raised by some persons who, after the president launched the code of conduct today, are legitimate, specific to this particular one that has this figure of 20,000 in there. I want to bring you in on that. That appointees are prohibited from accepting gifts or favors, especially from companies or individuals with interest in governmental decisions. If a gift received during an official engagement and its estimated value exceeds 20,000, it must be declared. Now, is there a legitimate concern about this figure, that that threshold is too high and that really should be lower, that if appointees receive gifts lower, much lower in value? Some have suggested 2,000, 1,000, but not 20,000. This and other details of this code of conduct, how does it strike you?
That, yes, it definitely does to some extent, because let's not forget the fact that the president called the appointees together, right, and held this ceremony. Yeah, it's a form of conscientization. I'm always grateful for even small things, because he's brought it back into the front burner. That's a conversation. So to that extent, for me, it makes a difference. And he's personally told them, and I heard what the chief of staff also told them, that, look, they will be sacked, the letter will be written, you come back to his chief of staff, nothing can be done, you go to the president, nothing can be done. Yes, so it's some form of conscientization, right? But as I stated earlier, we should learn the key thing is that, we'll come to the gift, the threshold of 20,000. But the main thing I want to re-emphasize is that President Kufuor for 8 years didn't deal with the Mahama Code of Conduct. He didn't use it, right? So, yes, we've already invested some energy in this code that's been launched. Yes, it's all right. But let's move on and get it into hard law, an act of parliament. Yes, let's do one that, yes, even though theoretically somebody can say the new government can repeal it. Well, if you want to repeal it when a new government comes, they are going to face the wrath of the Ghanaian. Now we are different. You see how Galamsey has united us as a country, etc. So the same way, this law, we've been having this conversation for over 20 years. So once we get it passed, it's not going to be easy for the next government to just come and repeal it anyhow, you see. So let's do it. Let's do it. So that's going to be the way to go. Now, back to the matter of the content, what has been shared with us so far. Yeah, the 20,000, yes, I understand the president. Yes, I understand. At a certain level, 20,000 is not much money. But if you look at it from the perspective of the poverty figures, so as far as I'm aware, not less than 10% of our people have food insecurity. I know the number is higher. In a country where you have more than 10% suffering from food insecurity, etc., 20,000 is a lot of money. So 20,000, that would be at least like about 700 or so a month. Hey, that's a lot of money. Even the leap that we've been giving the very poor people, I don't think one individual can get more than 700 Ghana cedis a month. So it tells you that poverty being a very big problem, and especially graduate unemployment. When the graduates hear this, they'll be very dissatisfied because they are home, they have no jobs. So when they hear a public office can get a gift of 20,000 and not declare it, it's going to cause a lot of disaffection. I understand where the president is coming from. In certain circles, you say 20,000 is not much. But when you come, as I said, to a perspective, if you analyze from the perspective of poverty and graduate unemployment.
Yeah. And Council, I thank you so much for your thoughts on this. And this is a conversation that we're going to be exploring from different angles. And those two angles that you also put out there, it's well noted. But I thank you so much. Let the conversation continue on this on our various social media handles. But there's some breaking news coming through right now. Just received notice from the Ghana Police Service. Breaking news is that the Ghana Police Service has reviewed several video footages on an alleged assault on a police officer by Honorable Alexander Apenyomaking during the just ended demonstration. Following the review, the Ghana Police Service has written to the Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament requesting the release of Alexander Apenyomaking to assist ongoing investigation into the alleged incident. The officer in question will also be assisting in investigation. So that is the information coming through right now here on Ghana Tonight. This is breaking news. The statement came through minutes ago from the Ghana Police Service. Ghana Police Service has reviewed several video footages on an alleged assault on a police officer by Honorable Alexander Apenyomaking during the just ended demonstration, and that was earlier today. Now, following the review, the service has written to the Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament requesting the release of Alexander Apenyomaking to assist ongoing investigation into the alleged incident. The officer in question will also be assisting in the investigation. That is the information that we have right now. Meanwhile, Alexander Apenyomaking has also just released a statement in his capacity as Minority Leader of Parliament, and the details of the statement we will put on the screen as we go on, but this is it, essentially responding to this invitation by the Ghana Police Service. It says, I write to strongly condemn the reprehensible and disgraceful act of violence perpetrated against me by a uniformed police officer, Constable Forson, at the entrance of Parliament House during today's peaceful and highly successful Save the Judiciary demonstration. As a leader of the demonstration, I led the protesters together with the leadership of the other political parties to Parliament, one of the designated stops on our route, to formally present our petition. Earlier, we had delivered copies to the Supreme Court, and from Parliament, we were to proceed to the Jubilee House. Upon our arrival at Parliament House, the national organizer and other party leaders had already been granted access. The Deputy Minority Leader, Patricia Apiaje, and I were then invited by the party's Communications Director, Richard Ahiagba, to proceed and join them. As I approached the barricade, without any provocation, a uniformed police officer stationed behind the barricade, Constable Forson, a tall, fair, heavily built officer, deliberately struck the left side of my chest with the full force of his right palm, directly near my heart. The impact of the hit dazed me, and I was visibly shaken and short of breath. In that moment, I spontaneously protested his conduct, asking why he would seek to harm me. The inspector, who was facilitating my access along with other officers, quickly intervened and assisted me into the restricted area, where I had to lean against the wall at the entrance of Parliament House to prevent myself from collapsing. A National Service personnel from Parliament, whom I know, approached and offered me water. It goes on, and essentially continues, says, I have always respect. It says, accordingly, I am formally filing a petition to the Inspector General of Police to demand a full investigation into the conduct of Constable Forson. There were numerous senior police officers who witnessed the appalling conduct of the constable firsthand and can corroborate the event. Well, this video, it's gone viral on social media. We'll show you just snippets of it. As you know, we did not attend this particular protest, but as you've seen, gone viral on social media, you have an idea of exactly why the Ghana Police Service has invited him, and then also Alexander Apenyomaking also now stating that he's going to file a formal complaint or petition to the Inspector General of Police to demand a full investigation into the conduct of Constable Forson. There were numerous senior police officers who witnessed the appalling conduct, according to opinion marking, of the constable firsthand and can corroborate the events. I have always respected and worked cordially with the Ghana Police Service, goes on, and says it is evident that elements within the NDC's propaganda machinery are now weaponizing this incident to deflect attention from the overwhelming success and peaceful conduct of our demonstration. Well, this statement inviting him came from the Ghana Police Service. Alfred Ocansey statement also stating his side of things. It's a 3-page statement. We just read almost 2 pages of it. The full complement of that statement you'll find on 3news.com. But that leads us into that particular demonstration earlier today. This is what he said. Take a look.
Of the state, we expect that the petition will be brought to the House floor once the House resumes for deliberation. And finally, to the principal actor himself. We believe that what is happening is not perhaps. There must be an end to this issue of you do me, I do. There must be an end to retaliatory politics. In Ghana today, all of us as political actors have a story to tell. Where do we end the vicious cycle? It is not yielding to the whims of hawks and hardliners in our respective political parties that will make us better political leaders. We believe that the hawks must be pushed back onto the fringes so that the centrists can take the center stage for the good of our country. In today's era of social media, you cannot control what gets onto the streets, and this democracy must be protected and safeguarded. So, my respected brother and friend, this is to you. The language is very respectful and decent, and it expresses our views because we know we are president.
So a Deputy Chief of Staff, Stan Dogbe, was there to receive the petition by the demonstrators for and on behalf of the president. And this is what he said after he received the petition. Take a look.
On behalf of the Chief of Staff here in the office of the President, and on behalf of the President, I'm delighted to receive the petition from the coalition. It will be duly presented to the Chief of Staff for the attention of the President. Let me say that we are happy that your process started this morning and has ended very peacefully. That in itself is a very strong message about the democracy that President Mahama wants to instill in our dear country. If it were the case like this over the past 8 years, I'm sure that the retaliatory politics that you talk about wouldn't have been the case. You referencing retaliatory politics is an admission that the years of President Akufo-Addo and Mahama Bawumia were not the best for this country.
I'll tell you some of the demands of the MPP and the other political parties in this petition that they presented to the president, received by Stan Dogbe. After this quick break, and Justice Abdullah, a private legal practitioner, is going to be joining us on the details of this said petition. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly.
Why are more and more professionals choosing Flamingo paint?
As an interior decorator, I aim for that beautiful, elegant look. Flamingo paint has great hiding ability to cover and transform old walls easily with just one coat.
Impressive.
For me, as a professional painter, I love Flamingo paints because with just small paints, I paint huge area, meaning more profit for me.
Great value for money.
As an architect, Flamingo paint, with its well-researched and solid composition, guarantees durability for all my buildings.
Flamingo paint, superior hiding, superior coverage, superior durability. Flamingo paint, simply superior.
If whiskey could talk, Johnny Walker Black Label. Listen. with notes that only come 12 years in a barrel. Sweet, smooth toffee, rich fruit, and a touch of smoke.
Welcome back. This is Ghana Tonight. Now, these are some of the demands as was put out by Richard Ahiamba, the Director of Communications of the NPP via Joy News. He says, one, they are demanding that President Mahama should immediately reverse the suspension of the Chief Justice, that President Mahama must affirm publicly that he is still committed to upholding the Constitution, which includes the separation of powers, and then also the third, that President Mahama must, his posturing, they say, towards the judiciary is aimed at amending the constitution for him to seek a third term. That if it's not true, he must come and clarify that. These are the 3-point demands in the petition that was submitted by the NPP and the other political parties who protested today to the Chief of Staff, the Deputy Chief of Staff who received the phone on behalf of the President. And Justice Abdullah is a private legal practitioner. He is a lecturer at the UPSA Law School. Thank you for joining us. And you're saying this 3-point demand, how does this strike you?
First off, I think these are childish demands that are being made on the President. The President has not done anything to warrant this kind of ridicule that is being demanded of him. The President has already sworn an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. That is a solemn oath the President has already sworn to. And from where I sit for the past 4 months, I see the President doing exactly that. He's led by example, affirmed his commitment to upholding the principles of rule of law, accountability, and other standards that are required for or in a democratic regime. I think that if there is anything that is short of this, it is rather the posture of the MPP that, in this particular case, that is attempting to stifle the President from achieving exactly what he has sworn an oath to do. And I know this call is directly in relation to the proceedings going on regarding the potential removal or otherwise of the Chief Justice. I do not see in any way or form or shape how a call on the judiciary, an arm of government, and particularly the head of that institution, to account for his stewardship in this particular case, and serious allegations of infractions having been made against the head of that institution, to account for those matters amounts to, or in any way should make anyone think that the President or anyone else, for the President in particular case, is targeting a third term comeback. Assuming that is the way to go, that's what the President is thinking. I do not think that the way to go is by engineering, if you like, the removal of the CG. I'm sure the President will be smart. In fact, is smart enough. We all can, credit the President with that level of intelligence to use better methods to achieve that. And the achievement of that, I'm sure, would require some form of interventions in Parliament that can easily resonate on, in fact, indeed, and result in the exact thing that the President seeks to do, rather than removing a Chief Justice. In any case, the President is not removing a Chief Justice. The President has no role to play in the removal of a Chief Justice. In fact, he doesn't have authority to remove a Chief Justice. The President has absolutely no control over the situation. If you look at the constitutional design that we have presently, an independent person or anyone else, including you and I, can simply wake up tomorrow with some level of evidence, send a petition that the CJ or any member of the Supreme Court or the Superior Court has done A, B, C, D, and all those A, B, C, Ds put together are sinful in relation to the constitutional requirement of a person sitting in that office. And so on the basis of those infractions, this person ought to be removed from office. The moment the President receives this, the Constitution provides detailed design, procedures that ought to be followed. Now, there may be issues that legitimately may be raised about these procedures, but it does not in any way grant the President that sole authority to determine who sits in as a CJ or a member of the Superior Court or the Supreme Court for that matter. The president has absolutely no hand in that. So attempting to smear the president in this particular case with this narrative, for me, is a far-fetched thought, and I do not think that it merits any commentary from anyone because it's too childish as far as I'm concerned.
Well, but they are watching us right now. They will certainly not agree with, now if I say the MPP, LPG, NDP, and then the other political parties, PMP and others who hit the streets today, they will not agree with you if you describe their demands as childish, because in their minds, yes, it is the rule of law at play. Yes, the president is following the dictates of the Constitution. He's done no wrong, but you cannot also discount the politics of things in there, can you? That's their position.
First off, the CJ was appointed by a president. That is a political decision. Second, the CJ was appointed at a time where she was nowhere close to being the senior most at the apex court. Now, that is a political decision. My position here is that everything regarding the three main arms of government, one way or the other, would involve a political decision. And so the politics in itself is not wrong. But if you say, if the position is that there is no legitimacy in the process that has been commenced against the CJ, then, as far as I'm concerned, there is a basis for us to have a dialogue, for us to have that kind of conversation. But if you tell me that there's a policies behind it, of course there's potential policies behind it. The MPP and the political parties who are demonstrating against the process, they are not demonstrating because the constitutionality or otherwise of it is wrong. They are demonstrating because it is political. They are demonstrating because they, at least as far as the appointment was concerned, it was the MPP that appointed the CJ, the current CJ. At the time where we had sitting members of the Superior Court who were overly qualified to sit in that office. I am not in any way saying that because she was preferred as against someone else, so it is right or wrong. But I'm saying that so long as the appointment itself has a political undertone, the removal would automatically also involve some amount of politics. But that is not to say that a removal process must necessarily be more akin to politics than a legitimate removal. If there is no legitimacy to the removal, then as far as I'm concerned, I would not support, and I do not support any such, because I think that to build a strong and a firm institution worthy of our democracy, it must be devoid of all forms of interference, particularly if that interference is nothing beyond a person belonging to party A or party B. That is how I would look at politics from. If the removal is purely because the CJ is an NPP and not because she's not an NDC, then obviously there will be a reason for us to have a dialogue on this. But if there is merit in the petitions, the multiplicity of petitions that have been forwarded, that have been made to the president, then you cannot discuss politics with me, because at that point we are looking at accountability. We are looking at the principles of possibly in this case upholding the virtues of the office that a CJ ought to have. And so if that office that is not yielding and upholding those levels of integrity, the level of reputation that you expect of the office of a CJ, then I would strongly insist that we go into the merit. We determine whether or not there are infractions, and if there are infractions, the penalties ought to fall where they need to be.
I thank you so much for your thoughts tonight on this matter. And Justice Abdullah is private legal practitioner and then also a lecturer at the UPS Law School. Thank you so much for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. Join us same time tomorrow at 10 p.m. here on TV3 and also on 3FM 92.7. On behalf of the rest of the team, we do appreciate your company. I am Alfred Ocansey. Have a good night.
Ghana Tonight is brought to you by
Flamingo Paint, superior durability, superior hiding, superior